So if you're like Megan and I, countless times while doing research, you've been asked the simple question, who is this actually for? And somewhere along that journey, we probably built a persona. Now, Megan, not everyone is familiar like you and I are with persona, so please share with us, what is this idea of a persona and why does it even matter?
Personas are really important because we are not always designing for people who are exactly like us.
I am not my user.
Exactly, right? And so sometimes it's really helpful to put down on paper who we think that person is, imagine a little bit about them. Maybe we know some facts about them because we've done some research.
Okay.
Having those all in one place documented so that when we're trying to make design decisions, we have something to refer back to when we're having that question of like, would I like this? Does that matter if I would like this? Or would my persona that I'm designing for like this?
Okay, so let's unpack personas for just a couple of minutes. So one, a persona sounds like a summarization of common or overlapping attributes in a population, but is it common for me to have hundreds of personas for my users, or am I now getting into things like marketing segmentation?
It would be very difficult to design for hundreds of personas.
Or even thousands with the internet these days, right?
Exactly. Right, a persona is really a blend of all of the characteristics of that type of person in one place so that we can check ourselves against that as we're designing, right? So if I'm designing for moms, maybe I have a few types of moms that I'm designing for. Maybe I have busy moms or working moms, and I might have a different persona for each of those types of moms. But maybe there's 2 or 3 types of moms, not 100 different types of moms, which we certainly know there are 100 different types of moms.
Maybe thousands, infinite. No mom is the same as any other. We'll allow them all to kind of live on their own platform. Okay, so I see this idea of I'm going to describe a population that I'm ultimately trying to serve with this product or service. And there's going to be different dimensions. Now, sometimes people get a little bit silly with the naming of these, right? It's Powerful Pete or Jackrabbit Jane. Why can that sometimes be distracting from the core part about building empathy with personas? Like, so sometimes people have thought of these characters, but what happens when we make personas more like cartoons and less like a population?
The goal of a persona is to be an empathy building tool, right? So we really do want to be able to sort of see the world through that person's eyes. And if we're Powerful Pete or Super Susie, something like that, right? When we take it away from being a real person, of course, that then does make it very difficult to have empathy with that person or type of person.
All right, Megan, you've told us a lot about building empathy with the persona, but each individual human being or group of human beings is infinitely complex. We could consider attributes as broad-ranging as how they use technology, how much money they make, where they live, how many humans are in or around their life in some capacity, or of course things like education or an infinite number of possibilities, right? So designing race cars is different than how to pack school lunches, which is different than how to think about housing or the like. What kinds of attributes should we start to think about for this particular population? What needs to go in a persona?
So if we have done some research, or if we've just spent a lot of time with our users, we can make sure that our personas include the things that that person really cares about, really wants, really dreams of, really imagines for themselves and for the people around them as they use our product and service, right? And so we have to understand, in the scenario where a person is using our product or service, what do they want to get out of this? What do they care about? What are the things that are stopping them today that maybe our product or service could come in and change for them or relieve for them, right? So having an understanding of who this person is inside the world of whatever we're building or creating is really important as we're thinking about a persona. So maybe education matters, but maybe education also doesn't matter.
Sure.
That may be an attribute that we don't really care about because whatever we're designing for really has nothing to do with that. So having their education level on our persona isn't really helping us have more empathy for that person.
Well, I love how you really organize this around goals and objectives, right? So what is blocking or what is missing in order to create some value between a product and a service, an individual consuming it in whatever form that ends up being? What I also liked is you highlighted kind of pains and enablers. So what is inherently blocking them, which may or may not be things like education, skill, language, location, as well as enablers. So technology they already use, brands they already affiliate with, locations they already visit, etc. And in fact, if we think about focusing on our template here, this is an opportunity to sort of remind ourselves about this opening diagram and table we've put together. So just to echo some of the words you already said, you can see here we've built this template to allow your project to come in focus. And let's assume it's something around your daily commute or transportation. Well, the first column we have here is key factors. So when we've done research, when we've walked a mile in someone else's shoes, did they talk an awful lot about logistics of the people they caregive for? Or was it a matter of how much they earned or their ability or comfort levels to use a smartphone to request to interact with some form of mobility or transportation? So what we've highlighted here in our first column is, hey, what are the factors? And then to echo your point around empathy, true empathy, not just superficial empathy, why does it really matter to this particular population?
Right.
We then go on to say, well, what are the ways they describe comfort, access, maturity, or experience in the possible ranges of our template? And then we've included a little bit, just because I'm not a designer, you're certainly more of one than I am, visualizations about how we can represent that. So sometimes people think in terms of yes or no. I'm either in this location or I am not, or they think of it as a degree of comfort. I'm a 4 out of 5 on using my smartphone, whereas, my parents might be a 2 or 3 out of 5 from a general comfort level. Does that sound right?
Sounds great.
Okay, now the next thing we're gonna see in our template, even though there's many ways to explore personas, is this idea of a map. Now, again, having no right or wrong answer here, what you're noticing on my persona 1 is a variety of assets. So I've included goals, frustrations, preferred channels, brands. I've started the template here, but this is really not a limitation on personas. In fact, we've seen them in probably infinite variations.
Absolutely. Like we said at the beginning, you really need to think about what you need this document to be for whatever you're designing for, right? If what we've given you here in this template isn't helping you to have empathy for this person or to better understand this person so that you can design for them, you could feel free to adjust this and use different factors or put different goals on here, or even take the goals section off altogether and replace it with something else.
As you said, Megan, we tried to broaden the idea, and that's why I've actually included a variety of persona portraits here. Now, none of these individuals are absolute, but we tried to organize, earlier in your lifespan on average to older in your lifespan, right? And a variety of different representations of ability and ethnography and demographics and the like. So a reminder to everyone that part of the powerful tool of a digital collaboration is not being limited to my ugly stick figure drawings that I would occasionally have to put everybody through, pasted on the wall.
Absolutely. I can go on the internet and find a picture that sort of looks like the person I'm designing for, rather than relying on someone sketching or drawing something.
Yeah, well said. And in fact, I would remind everybody that portraiture is not the limitation of who we represent. So natural ability, we don't want to be overcommitting to just people that are currently abled as opposed to differently abled. We don't want to only be focusing on those that are present in my current geography and speak the same language or have the same beliefs. We want to be much more expansive.
Yep, it's important to remember that our users don't always look exactly like us,
to say the least. So now we have some other interesting components in here. Now I have some black and white icons, I have some emoji faces, I have hashtags, I have brand labels. Is there any right or wrong way to do a persona? I mean, I have icons and brands and emojis and hashtags here. Is that the only tools I can use to create a persona?
Certainly not. Of course, we have to remember what this document is ultimately for. We make personas when we're trying to have empathy for a person or population who isn't exactly like us, right? And we have to think about that persona relative to the product or service or whatever it is that we're making. And so when we think about what needs to be on this page, it can be anything that helps us better have empathy for a person in this situation. So if I'm trying to build a better snack food, a new kind of snack food, maybe it's important for me to understand what kinds of snacks does this person already like? Or where does this person shop? Or where does this person find out information about snacks? So maybe I pull in a few brand logos, etc., onto here.
Well said. And in fact, Megan, you really kind of alley-oop us here into the kind of centerpiece. So the goals of getting a snack, the locations, the frustrations of maybe not having the formal mobility or enough money or dollars to kind of execute on this. But we also have ranges. Now, why do we have like spectrum and ranges here and not just yes or no or how much is your income and the like when we think about personas?
One of the reasons why it's really helpful to have ranges is because we're not really pointing at an exact value with a persona. We're just making estimations or estimated guesses. And that makes these a little bit different from a marketing segmentation where we may have a really specific understanding of someone's salary range or someone's household income or someone's age, right? In this case, we're making a guess based on what we know about people or who we think we're designing for. And so sometimes it's better to be a little less precise with things.
Yeah, it makes sense. The other thing I think about for ranges and spectrums is if I find that all, let's say 3 of my personas have the exact same characteristics 90% of the time, I have to look back and say, well, if I graded them all the same on these 3 major indexes, are they really different consumers receiving different messages? Well, Megan, we have a number of personas on here. My last question for you is, do we all want to build our own personas and come together? Do we want to change these personas over time? Do we want to think of the personas as completely different users or kind of related in the same bucket? What would be the reason where I would build, in this case, persona 1 and persona 2?
So some of these methods pair really nicely with other things that you might have seen us do or make in our template series, right? So it may be really helpful to do a method before this, like a stakeholder map or something like that. So we can really start to understand who are all the people in the universe that we're designing for. If we're starting with personas, it might be nice to allow different members of the team to build their own personas based on who they think we're designing for, and then bring everyone together and compare and contrast. We could also, if we have a better sense, if we think our team is more aligned, we could also sit and work together on a persona or 2 that we feel best represents the people that we're designing for. So if we say we're designing for a commuter who's trying to get to work, you and I might sit down together and work on that persona in the same document, or we could each kind of work on our own vision of that commuter in 2 different documents and then come back together and compare and contrast.
Well, I love the idea how this could equally be an interesting icebreaker for like-minded thinkers or sort of eagerly aspirational aligned moments, or it could be an interesting point for healthy conflict and critique and ultimately to see where our gaps and our differences are. So not only do I see the alignment, but I also see the exploration. Well, regardless of where this template takes you, Megan and I hope that you explore deeply and broadly, and a reminder that you can practice personas in your daily life around your household, school, or otherwise related activities, and of course, ultimately end up providing this professionally. So on behalf of Megan and I, thank you so much for dialing in. Good luck with the template, and please let us know your feedback.